Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this video was not in my calendar today, to the point that the video going up later today, so make sure to check that out. I don't know exactly when, but probably either 2 or 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, will be basically a whole bunch of games, 36 games I added to my collection in 2021 so far. That was the video that you were supposed to be watching now. But in the past 48 hours, I've gotten a ton of requests from people to put out a final update around Wild Assent, Levon Rising, to put out an update covering what you should get, what you shouldn't get, what my opinions are, the King of Averages review, all those fun little things. And to the first 14 people, I said, no, I'm good. There's 2 days left. I've already covered. I already like it. People already know that. There's no need to talk about it again. And then the next 14 people convinced me. Enough people asking for something does often mean that it will happen. And so, this is going to be Wild Assent versus Stormsunder. Which one should you get and why? But it's going to be coming at it from the stance of somebody who hasn't played Stormsunder, so take that with a grain of salt. I'm going to be walking through a bunch of different things, the various add-ons unlocked, the various, Storm's Brush or whatever, all the extra things, King of Averages review, which game might be the right choice for you. I'm going to be comparing the games, both in their gameplay, the price point, the contents, all the stuff over there, as well as, and again, timestamps down below as there always are, and the timestamps down below to the point where I will be giving you a guided walkthrough of which one of these are right for you depending on what you value, depending on the gameplay you want, your price point, your budget, all those different things. And so starting off, and most importantly, is watch the King of Averages review if you want to be anti-sold on this game. I talk about this a lot in other videos. Sometimes I don't care. Well, I think most games are good. I talk about most games as if they're good, but then there are games that I am personally hyped by. There are games that I really enjoy and love, and Wild Ascent very much is that game for me. I love the intricacies, the puzzle of the game. I love the leveling up, the upgrades, the new story that the Levon Rising adds just further involves me in that adventure. It's giving me a lot of things I love, a few things I'm critical of, and some of the things are being addressed, and others just don't stop me from enjoying it. The rulebook, which is a mess, I talked about in my review, does not stop me from enjoying the game. The lack of enemy AI, ideally, I'd like it to be a little bit better, but also that would add further complexity to the game. I'm fine with it where it is right now, while recognizing that it's a weakness. But again, for all that I love a game, for all that I gush about a game, it is important to get the other side of the coin. And to that end, the two content creators, most content creators who have played Wild Ascent have loved it. But the two who I would point at are going to be King of Averages, a long, detailed review over here. You can check this out, covering both the base game as well as Levon Rising. And then Mike from Unstop Co-op Shop as well has a 5 and 5 if you want a shorter, more condensed review. Both of those will give you the other side of the coin in case you want to be counter-sold, because there's a lot of money on the table here. Your board game collection potentially can get, $600 more expensive depending on how this video goes. Forget that. Your board game collection can get, $1,200 to $1,500 more expensive depending on just how far down this rabbit hole you are willing to go, because this is not just about Wild Ascent Levon Rising. This is about Wild Ascent Levon Rising versus Stormsunder. Which game is right for you, or either right for you, and how to go through that. And as a baseline overview, both games take place in the same universe. Both games are by the same publisher. Both games have some of the most gorgeous miniature sculpts I have ever seen, period. And I don't just mean renders, I mean the actual physical sculpts are absolutely insanely detailed. Some of the best sculpts I have ever seen. A little over the top, debatably, because of just the sheer amount of detail they include, but some of the best sculpts I've ever seen. Now, miniature sculpts are not why you're here, unless, of course, you're a board game painter, in which case, get this game. These are the best sculpts ever. You don't need to know anything else. If you're here for the gameplay, both games are going to be giving you different styles of gameplay with sharing the same general vein. Wild Ascent Levon Rising is going to be giving you a campaign-driven, well, they're both going to be campaign-driven to a degree, but Wild Ascent and Levon Rising, both of them together, are going to be giving you a campaign that is much more accessible. The default campaign is going to be 10 missions long, so that's going to be 10 encounters. They are further adding even more accessibility by coming at you with a 5 to 6 shorter campaign instead. So if 10 seem too long for you, if you want to get through this game in roughly 8 to 10 hours of gameplay and 10 to 15 hours, well, they're going to be giving you a shorter campaign with 5 to 6 missions that you can jump through. So that's going to be the campaign length of Wild Ascent. Stormsunder, on the other hand, is coming at you with 50 plus encounters. I say 50 plus because there's a lot of side quests you can go on. There's a ton of further levels of how many games and encounters you can have before you have finally finished your game of Stormsunder. Keep in mind, that's going to be the base wave of Stormsunder. Stormsunder comes at you with 3 different acts. 3 acts you can progress through. All I'm talking about, just one single solitary act of the game is going to be 50 plus missions, which means, you can do the math over there. If 10 missions is going to be up to 15 hours, you're talking about roughly 75 hours of gaming to engage and fully go through a single act. keep in mind, if you have multiple characters you want to play through, as well as the various other acts, Stormsunder can full-on be a lifestyle game with the amount of content it's bringing to the table. So that's going to be the overall campaign structure of the two games. Wild Assent is going to be coming at you with a bit of a head-to-head skirmish mode that Stormsunder does not. Stormsunder only has the cooperative mode, Wild Assent has the hunt mode, but Wild Assent is going to be giving you skirmish and the hunt, so it gives you a little more gameplay choices in that sense. Both games are going to involve playing 4 characters no matter how many players you have controlling them. You can have 4 Seekers in Wild Assent, you're going to have 4 heroes in Stormsunder, so you're always controlling 4 characters, which means you're probably looking at 1, 2, or 4 players as the sweet spots for this game. Although 4, I'd be hesitant to play these at 4 myself. Obviously you can do it at 3 with a single person controlling 2 characters. That always feels a little off to me personally. And 4 players, I feel like, again, I have not played Stormsunder, take that into account, but at least speaking for Wild Assent, I like doing more in this game. Controlling 4 characters, well, having 4 people control 1 character each means you're doing less. It means you're watching others and having to be involved more on the sidelines of the game than playing it 1 or 2. For me, these games are going to shine at the 1 or 2 player count. From that end, this is something I can't say myself, but from what I understand of the 2 games, Wild Ascent is going to be a bit easier to solo. You can definitely solo Stormsunder. In fact, if you are someone who is used to these styles of games, you can for sure solo Stormsunder. But Stormsunder is going to have more stuff going on at the table, more interplay between the abilities, more synergies between what you can do, and just more cards on the table, more things to manage in the game. So to that end, controlling 2 characters in Stormsunder versus 4 characters, and we're comparing controlling 4 characters in Stormsunder versus controlling 4 characters in Wild Ascent is going to be a more complicated experience. Certainly doable, but just factor that in. If you find yourself a little easily overwhelmed, factor that into your decision. Speaking for myself, I don't love having a ton of things going on in games. I like just controlling my stuff, but I found that Wild Ascent has been very easy with relative terms, so take that with a grain of salt, but Wild Ascent has been very easy to control solo. I have not had the chance to control it Stormsunder, so I can't talk for that past the general idea of what I know. That's going to be the general high-level overviews of the 2 games. There's going to be some other aspects that are worth talking about, such as the fact that Wild Ascent is going to be more structured and rigid in the way that campaign plays out. The Levon Rising certainly changed that up a bit with the use of charges and different ways that you can have a campaign, but ultimately, for the most part, Wild Ascent is going to be played on a simple square map, call it a day. Stormsunder, on the other hand, is going to have map tiles, so the map tiles are going to result in different options for the way the game can play out, different pathways. Again, going back to King of Average, watching his review, he talks about like having a hall where you have, darts shooting at you from left, right, and center as you wander down a hall, which is something that's a degree of freedom and choice to the way that the stories and campaign can be structured in Stormsunder that they cannot be in Wild Ascent. So it gives you more freedom to play with in terms of the way that goes on. Now, that's very helpful if you're going to be playing 50 plus encounters. That is going to be the general overviews of these campaigns. Wild Ascent is going to have, you're going to be facing off against 1 to 5 monsters at any given point. The monsters are going to be harder to kill, not as hard as a single boss in a boss mode game, but it's going to be harder to kill them than some of the more cannon fodder that you'll have in Stormsunder. Stormsunder is going to often focus on more 6 to 10 enemies at a time, somewhere in that range. These are all general numbers, so you're fighting against more characters, but they're a little easier to kill. So, Stormsunder is going to be a high level up from fighting against zombies and Zombicide, versus Wild Ascent is going to be a step down from, if those are the ranges we're talking about. If Zombicide is on the low end and, you have a Kingdom Death monster on the high end, we have Levon Rising and Wild Ascent is going to be over here, and Stormsunder is going to be over here in terms of the just how much your enemies are cannon fodder versus how much they are actual challenges to complete. That is generally going to cover most of the high level gameplay ideas of these 2 games. Which means now is a good time to talk about the new things before we talk about price point comparisons. New things, Wild Ascent is going to be coming at you with 2 extra new things, 2 add-ons. Let me go ahead and look past my camera, which is blocking that little sidebar. We're going to have 2 add-ons for Wild Ascent, which are going to be the Waterways of the Wild, and we're going to have the Daughters of Drukath. Now, the Waterways of the Wild, let's go ahead and look at that one. That's going to be giving you basically just more of stuff you're typically used to. You're going to have more miniatures, more Seekers, you're going to have more enemies, more maps, more cards. That's basically it. That's not going to be anything extra to the game. And in fact, what I would say is if you're focusing on the campaign aspect of the game, so the campaign aspect of Levon Rising is not going to utilize any of these characters. Now, the campaign aspect does occasionally call for random characters, so you can certainly include these then, but they won't be included as fixed characters in the game. And if you find yourself frustrated by that, if you're like, but I wanted to include, the Waterways of the Wild so I can have as fully immersive experience as possible, well, then now you know why the campaign mode for Levon Rising requires Shadows of the Silverstrom. It's there's always a balance between trying to include and make it feel as cohesive a story as possible. Whenever you don't do so, you have someone like myself who's going all in, who feels like, I want this character over here, this giant shark head hammer thing, I want that person to have a special feature in the campaign mode so it feels more involved. But then by doing so, you force other people to get that expansion. So that's a balance. That's no matter what you do, you're never going to be able to make everyone happy no matter what. In this case, again, you can use them, you can proxy them in, but they will not be fixed characters in Levon Rising. They're going to be just extra characters, extra, more of the same, more good stuff. And again, just the sculpts are, as with everything else here, the sculpts are absolutely amazing. The real highlight is going to be the Daughters of Drukath, because this is going to be, I think I said that right, it's going to be, we have the, this over here from Adara is going to be a character in here. They have lots of crossovers in general if you go through the stretch goals, lots of crossover characters, maybe we'll go through a few, we'll see. But we have the Daughters of Drukath expansion. The Daughters of Drukath expansion is going to be adding, well, more beautiful renders, as you've come to expect by now, just going through all these, more dinosaurs. It's going to be giving you 17 miniatures, 1 extra large miniature, 101 cards, and more importantly, most importantly, I would argue, it's going to be giving you a 50-page campaign book. I believe it's 50 pages. Why can I not see where it was? I believe it was 50 pages. I could have sworn it said 50 pages somewhere. I'm not seeing where that was, but it's going to be giving you I think, maybe 60 pages? Maybe it's 60 pages. Either way, it's going to be giving you a campaign book that you can utilize the campaign. It's going to be a Levon Rising style campaign with choice and degrees of pathways, and this leads to that, and you can do that to have this happen. And it's going to be doing all of that while being combinable with the base copy of Wild Assent. So in other words, if you want to have the Levon Rising gameplay, but it won't be Levon Rising, but it'll be the campaign aspects, and you want to do it on the cheapest dollar possible, then getting the Daughters of Drukath expansion is going to give you Wild Assent base plus Daughters of Drukath will give you the taste of the game that you might be interested in. That's going to be the new things that have been added as far as add-ons for gameplay add-ons. There's also some dice, there's also some Stormbrush. We might talk about those things later. Moving on to there, we're going to go to the price point and contents comparisons of these two games, and I'm going to cover that both from an entryway point, coming at these entryway base pledge, as well as an all-in. I'm not going to focus on the intermediate levels because there's only so many levels I can actually do. But base Wild Assent is going to be coming at you, and this is worth noting, some of these numbers are going to be changing a bit because, some of these are not counting for stretch goals or extras or whatever, so consider all these numbers general comparisons. But base Wild Assent is going to be coming at you for $119 is going to be, plus shipping and all of that. Obviously, it's going to be bringing you 49 miniatures, which is not a ton. 49 miniatures for $119. It's going to bring you 360 cards and 2 boards. I'm not focusing on the token count or every little detail. I'm trying to cover high-level overview. So again, $119, 49 miniatures, 360 cards, 2 boards. The miniature count will actually be a little higher because of stretch goals, but that's going to be true for Stormsunder as well, because looking at Stormsunder, if I can scroll up to the base pledge over here, the base pledge of Stormsunder is going to be bringing you 2 boxes. Well, I don't care about the box count. It's going to be bringing you for $149 compared to $119, bringing you 100 miniatures, twice the number of miniatures. It's going to be 67 larger cards. It's going to be like the character cards and whatnot. 1,095 cards. It's going to be 3 times the cards, 12 map tiles, and 300 pages of campaign content. Okay, so just to cover that again, $149 for 100 miniatures, 1,095 cards, and 300 pages of campaign content, compared to base Wild Assent, which is coming at $119, 49 minis, 360 cards, and 2 boards. So overall, that is just a very, very large gap in terms of the price point is a smaller gap, and then the content is a huge gap. The all-in pledge is not going to be much different. Now over here, you're going to see the picture for the all-in here, but I'm counting the all-in considering the 2 expansions, the Daughters of Drukath and the Waterways of the Wild as well, so this picture will not be a full comparison, but it's showing you a lot of pretty boxes, so we'll go ahead and show it. And that's going to be bringing you, the Wild Assent is going to be bringing you for $449, which is the same price point as Stormsunder, factor that in. So the same $449, and Wild Assent is bringing you 240 miniatures, once you factor in those 2 expansions. It's going to be bringing you 240 miniatures, 101 punch board cards, it's going to be the larger cards, 1,400 cards, and 152 pages of story. Okay, that's going to be everything they're bringing there. So again, 240 miniatures, 100 punch boards, 1,400 regular cards, and then 150 pages of story. And then if you go to Stormsunder over here is going to be giving you, for the same $449, you have 348 miniatures compared with 240. You have 322 large cards compared to 101. You have 2,956 cards compared to 1,400, and then you have 900 pages of story. So the same price point is giving you 1.5 times the miniatures, 3 times the number of larger cards, twice as many regular cards. The map tiles are hard to compare because Wild Assent is going to give you like 5 map boards, and Stormsunder is giving you 43 map tiles, so a little different comparison. And then 6 times the amount of story with 900 pages compared to 152 pages. Stormsunder is giving you a bucket load of content. This might be a video about Wild Assent, but really it's not. It's a video about Wild Assent versus Stormsunder for a reason. That is going to be everything going on there. Which brings us to the whole what should you do part of the video. This is the part of the video where I'm going to go through basically what I think is the right choice for any individual person based on what you particularly prioritize or care about, and of course I'll be telling you what I'm doing as well and why. This is not something you have to listen to. This is me being on YouTube just talking about things, but I think there are pathways that make things a better choice for you depending on what you value. And so let's go ahead and go through those pathways, starting off with the most important one here. If you don't feel pulled in by these games, walk away. You don't need more games. Your life was happy yesterday. Your life will be happy tomorrow. If you are completely content with the games in your shelf, this is not a video that is designed to be trying to sell you on these 2 games. I like this game. I like Wild Assent. I haven't played Stormsunder, but the miniatures in both these games are gorgeous. The world building is gorgeous. The art is gorgeous. The games that I have played are amazing. If I'm everything I can see about Stormsunder, I think it'll be an amazing game as well. But all of that is neither here nor there. If you are not pulled in by these games, if you don't see the appeal at this point in the conversation, walk away. That's not the point of this video. The video is meant to be a guided pathway as to what I think is the right thing for you, and part of that right thing is if you're not pulled in at this point, we are going to have a conversation about whether you're spending $120 or $1,500. That's the way this conversation goes from here. So if you don't need to do that, then the rest of this video is not helpful to you. From that, let's go ahead and go through it. Let's say you're somebody who wants to get whichever game is going to be here first. From what we currently know, Stormsunder is projected to hit in March 2022, Wild Assent is predicted to hit in April 2022. The game that's going to be here first, plain and simple, is going to be Stormsunder. If you're by like a month, so take it with a grain of salt, but if that's your first priority, then basically Stormsunder will be here about a month earlier than everything else. You can dive into it then. And as far as obviously delays can and will happen, I say will, delays can and will happen. I would assume Stormsunder will be here first, just based on, even though Wild Assent is the Wave 1 Wild Assent is primarily a reprint, so we don't have to worry about development time there. Nonetheless, it's still earlier in the process. I think Stormsunder is more likely to actually hit in March, and Wild Assent might drift a bit. These are all just guesses. Right now, they're about a month apart in terms of their estimation and hitting early 2022. I would guesstimate that we might see that slip to 2 or 3 months apart, with Stormsunder being here first. If everything goes according to plan, things can go wrong. So first and foremost, if you just want the game as fast as possible, well, first of all, secondhand market. Secondly is, March 2022. And that applies, by the way, if you're someone who's looking at the secondhand market, that's also the rough window. Add a few months buffer. You're talking about being without Wild Assent for roughly a year if you're looking at picking it up on the secondhand market, or if you're looking at selling your own copy, all those decisions as well. From there, let's go into the more of a pathway that has a little bit more nuance. And to begin with, let's say you are budget conscious. What was that ding? What is dinging on my phone? I don't know if that was. Anyways, let's go ahead and keep going on this. Is my camera still going? I think my camera's still going. I heard a weird ding. I don't know what that was. Anyways, so we're going to go through the pathways. Let's pretend you are budget conscious for a second. Let's pretend you are trying to get as much game as possible for as little dollars as possible. You just don't want to spend a lot of money. And like I said already, some of these price points over here are a lot of money. So from there, the question then becomes, what do you care about? Do you care about story? Well, if you don't care about story, you can go ahead and get the Wild Assent base pledge. That's going to go ahead and give you, let's see if we can find this over here. The Wild Assent base pledge is going to be your cheapest option at $120, giving you a decent amount of game. This was all the game I needed to really learn to love this game, and that's going to be $120. It's your cheapest entry point. If you do care about story, well, it does eliminate that, and then from there we move into wanting the Levon Rising content and or Stormsunder. So from there it's going to be a question of, if you care about story, how long of a story or campaign do you want? Because your cheapest option for having story is either going to be $149 if you get the Stormsunder base pledge, or roughly $169 or $170-ish or so if you get the Wild Assent core pledge plus the Daughters of Drukath expansion. So those are going to be your entry points there. So that's going to be roughly $170 to $150. Stormsunder, even then, is going to be giving you more content. So if you care about content in that sense, then Stormsunder is going to be the better option. If you care about having a shorter, more accessible story, 5 to 10 missions, then you're going to want Wild Assent base Pledge plus Daughters of Drukath for roughly $170. You will get that choose your own adventure story, you'll get that narrative, you'll get that aspect of feeling like you want to dive back in to see how the different pathways play, ideally each time with new characters or whatever it is you're doing. Those are going to be the options there. Let's say you're moved past the I can only get one, but you're budget conscious, so you're only going to get one of these games. Meaning we're not trying to be as cost conscious as possible, but rather if you're someone you're willing to get one of these games, the question is which one are you going to get? You're going to spend potentially up to $449 to get one of these two games. Well, in that case, it's going to be a few options here. We'll just go through each one, and Stormsunder is going to win most of these. If you care about most bang for your buck, Stormsunder, plain and simple. I think I showed this to you already. I know I did. But this is going to be just the best bang for your buck in terms of the sheer amount of content you will get. You are getting between 1.5 times to 2 times to 6 times the amount of story if you go with Stormsunder. So in terms of bang for your buck, once you're going all in one of these, Stormsunder is going to be the better pick. If you care about longer, more immersive campaigns, well, then Stormsunder is going to give you that as well. Again, that's going to be a 50+ story campaign, and you're talking about, all 3 arcs here. So you're talking about 150, who knows how many adventures you will have. This is a lifestyle game. It will keep you busy forever. So if you care about having a longer, more immersive, more detailed campaign, Stormsunder is going to win there. If you want more variability in the scenarios, Stormsunder, again, is going to be a win. Stormsunder is going to give you more variability to keep you interested and occupied across those 150+ missions you're playing. The 2 wins that Wild Assent will get here is first of all solo only, which is, again, both of them can be played solo, but if you're primarily going to be playing this solo only and you struggle with controlling a lot more things, then Wild Assent is going to be a win in that category. It's going to be easier to get up on the table and running and to be able to actually control and run the character solo. The second win that Wild Assent will get, and this is a big factor for me in my choices, is going to be the fact that you can play Wild Assent with between 5 to 10 missions is going to be a campaign arc. So if you want something easier to jump into, easier to table, easier to grab everything you need, and to get a full campaign running and finished and set up, then Wild Assent is going to be a bigger pick there. So if you're going for either one, Stormsunder is the much better back in terms of the amount of content, and in terms of the amount of depth and the story and how epic it will be. Wild Assent is going to be easier to jump into and a little bit easier to solo. Those are going to be the wins in that category. And then let's pretend that you fall in the category of you only live once. Even then, we kind of have 3 ways to go. Because if you only live once, then at that point, you can get everything you need. But everything you need has 3 tiers. You can get both of these games. $449 in Stormsunder, $449 in Wild Assent. You will get 2 epic sprawling games that give you a ton of content in different ways to jump down. But even then, you're going to have 2 further ways to upgrade. So let's go to Wild Assent over here. If we go to the add-ons, if you go to the add-ons in Wild Assent, as you can scroll down past this and see, you're going to end up with a few options from the various art lore books you can get, to the extras, to the Stormbrush. Okay, Stormbrush for these games is going to run you $200 more just to Stormbrush all your characters in Wild Assent, and they are amazing to look at. If you watch my original Wild Assent video, or if you watch my Wild Assent unboxing video, you can see an example of Stormbrushed miniatures from Stormbrushed Stormsunder miniatures, and they look gorgeous. They are a significant improvement, but that will run you an additional $200 on top of your game. That is the first way you can upgrade your adventure or your story over there, and you're gonna have the same exact thing if you go ahead and go to Stormsunder. You can see as well we have the exact same problem as well, where you can Stormbrush your stuff for another $300. You can Stormbrush all those miniatures. The nice part about the 348 miniatures is you get a lot of miniatures. The downside is it costs you more money to Stormbrush them and just deluxify them. And then even more than that, and I don't know if we'll see this in Wild Assent or not, but I know we've seen it in Stormsunder. Stormsunder has a bunch of bosses that you get to encounter in the game that really are just characters that kind of just show up for a brief scenario, and you engage with them, and then they go away. Those can be represented by by cardboard tokens. Those can be stand-in by just random miniatures. Or if you are over the top and want to further deluxify and spend tons of money, you can get any of the 3 boxes over here. There's going to be 3 boxes that are giving you basically, here we have, nope, not those. Here we go. The Villains and Civilians box 1, 2, and 3. It's going to be another $150 of just miniatures that have minimal to no gameplay relevance past being a standee on the map. And those are going to be giving you a ton more sculpts. Again, you should not be looking through this page at this point. You should be walking away as fast as you possibly can. These are just some of the tons of different options and miniatures you will have in this story-based campaign. So you can see that even if you're willing to go all in on everything, you're still looking at 3 different levels. You can get both games. You can get both games Stormbrushed. You can get both games Stormbrushed, and with all the extra characters and all the extra accessories and dice. And if you add up all of that stuff, you are looking at more than $1,500. It's a lot of money to be spending on either or both of these games. So again, walk through that pathway, walk through the decision that's right for you. For myself, sadly and reluctantly, I'm all in on both of these games. Stormsunder is a game that I am fully prepared that I may try it, think it's amazing, and sell it. I do not know if I will table that game enough to be worth owning everything, so I don't know how it's going. If you had me choose which one of these two game systems I would pick right now, based on having not played Stormsunder, I would pick Wild Assent absolutely for two reasons. Number one is the simple reason that I have played Wild Assent, and a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. A game that I know I love is automatically going to be worth more to me than a game that I think I will love, but who knows. And the second, and just as big, is that accessibility. Unless and until I get to a point where I can have a dedicated game table set up for campaign games that is never disturbed, every time I play a campaign game, I look at it and decide, is it worth pulling it out? I don't care if you're Gloomhaven, if you're Chronicles of Runegar, if you're Madara, if you're Stormsunder. If I have to look at you and think through whether it's worth setting it up and pulling it out again, I am slightly less likely to do so. And so until my lifestyle changes, I personally am far more pulled in by a game that promises me 5 to 10 missions to fully experience the game and then dive back in a second time than I am by something that tells me that I have 50 missions to go through. That borders on an obligation more than a game. It's an obligation that is significantly better than many obligations, but nonetheless it is something there. That is my personal bias. The way I personally play games right now is I am less likely to experience and benefit a 50 encounter long game. So factor those into your decisions. And keep in mind, I'm saying that knowing full well that Stormsunder is giving me twice the amount of content for my dollar, which makes it a very, very hard decision to put in. Do I get pulled in by the shiny, well, I mean, I got both of them, but do you get pulled in by the shiny, by the pretty, by the more miniatures, or do you go with the more reasonable and responsible decisions? Hard decisions to be made all around. I hope you found this video useful in some way. And later today, like I said already, I will have the 36 games I added to my collection in 2021. And until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.